What's up guys, it's Josh from KeepItTechie, and today I wanted to show you guys how to secure your Ubuntu 20.04 server using Fail2Ban. Now, as I stated in the intro of the video, I wanted to walk you guys through setting up and configuring Fail2Ban on Ubuntu server 20.04. And just to explain, Fail2Ban is used as a intrusion detection system that can be installed on all Linux servers. What Fail2Ban does is monitor specific log files located in var log for failed login attempts or automated attacks on your server. When these attempts are discovered from a specific IP address, Fail2Ban will block the IPs from gaining entry into your server. And just so you know, Fail2Ban leverages IP tables to block the suspected IPs. This is a great way of protecting your server because Fail2Ban can monitor multiple applications, including SSH. So let me go ahead and show you guys how to set this up. Okay guys, so I have my virtual machine up and running. It's Ubuntu 20.04, as you can see on the screen. And the first thing you want to do before installing any package on Ubuntu server is to update this system. And so let's run those commands right fast so you guys can see. But let me log in first. And the command to update is simply sudo apt updates. And this will refresh all the repositories on the system. That way we can have the latest and greatest updates in the repository. So, and then also, as you can see, all the packages are up to date, so we don't need to run the upgrade command. So I'm gonna back this off and just type in the installation. And actually, let me clear so I can put it up at the top. The command to install any package on Ubuntu is simply sudo apt install and then the package name, which this package name is Fail2Ban, and it's spelled F-A-I-L, the number 2, and then ban. And you can tab it out and press enter, and this will go through and install Fail2Ban on your system. Has a few dependencies like whois and a Python package. Just let those, everything install. Okay, so now that the installation is complete, let's go on and start Fail2Ban service, and as well as enabling it so it will start up on boot. And the commands to do that is simply sudo systemctl and then start Fail2Ban and press enter. And then as well as enable it. So let's use that same command, back off start, just put enable and press enter, and I'll actually enable Fail2Ban. So it'll start when we boot up the system. Okay, so let me clear this right fast because the first thing I want to do is actually show you the log file that Fail2Ban will be using for SSH. Because that's what we want to protect our server. I'm gonna have this server set up as a SSH server. I want to be able to connect to that server from outside of my network. So one thing you want to do is set up Fail2Ban, because if you've ever set up a Ubuntu server in the past, right when you give it access to the internet, there are people that are gonna scan that server and see if port 22 is open, and they'll start running a brute force on that server. So we want to prevent that before we open it up by configuring Fail2Ban. But the first thing I want to do is show you these log files. And what Fail2Ban uses is the authentication log. So let me show you guys that. So let's go sudo and actually let's just type tail -f and then var. We want to look at var log and then the authentication logs. As you can see, that's the log that it'll actually use. So whenever somebody connects via SSH, and I'm going to connect via SSH from my host machine, just to show you guys what pops up in this authentication log when someone tries to SSH into the server. So if we go SSH, and then I already know what the IP address is, but 192.168.10.125, and press enter. And then I'm gonna fully log into it. And you should see that log file update where it says Josh created a new session. So that's the way that works right there. That authentication log tracks all authentications through SSH, and Fail2Ban will filter out this column where it says SSHD and look for those connections. It'll look for failed connections. And depending on how many connections have failed from my IP address, as you can see, it tracks my IP address as well. So 192.168.10.115, that's my host machine's IP address. If I would have failed that connection while Fail2Ban was active and configured properly, if I would have failed, depending on how it's configured, by typing in the wrong password or whatever, it would block my IP address. So that's in a nutshell how it works. So let me go on and get in here and show you guys how to configure this so it'll block my IP if I fail. So let's get out of this file and let's go to the configuration directory, and I'm gonna CD to it. So it's CD etc and then Fail2Ban. This is the directory where all the configuration files are located. So as you can see, it's got, some folders in here: action.d, fail2ban.d. Those are just some folders because that's why they're blue. But the main files we want to mess with is the jail.config, which I'm not going to actually modify that file. I'm going to create a new file, and I'm going to create a jail.local file. So let's go on and create that now. Well, before I do that, let me go on and show you guys the Fail2Ban config. So if let's go sudo nano fail2ban.conf. And this is the configuration file. You don't want to really mess around with this unless you know what you're doing. But this is where the logs are stored for Fail2Ban. So it'll create its own log file, fail2ban.log. So that's there. And we can get out of this. And then the other configuration file, I just want to show it to you guys. But it's jail.conf, and press enter on that. Now this is the full configuration file. Now we don't have to mess with this. We can actually create another file, like I stated, jail.local, and we could just add in what we want. But it'll still look at this file for things that we haven't put in the other file. So you don't have to put all these configurations into the jail file. You can make it a whole lot simpler to track your changes by just creating a jail.local file and putting the changes in that file, and it'll still use the jail.config. It's just whatever you have in jail.local will replace anything that you have in jail.config. So let's get out of this file and let's go on and create that that jail.local file. So let's go sudo nano, and then we want to just name it jail.local and press enter. And it's a specific format you have to put it in. You have to put the application or service that you're trying to protect at the top, and you have to put it in brackets. And what we want to protect is SSHD. So let's type SSHD and then close that bracket, and you'll see it change, the color change. So that lets you know you're typing it in right. And I always put a space, but you start off by typing enabled and equals true. So that's the first line. And then we can go in and put the port for SSH. And you don't have to put the port number, you can just put SSH. But we all know that the port for SSH is 22. And the system understands that as well, so it knows to protect that port. And then we have to put the filter. Now this is the filter that will be used when looking through the authentication logs. And what we want to look for is SSH D, and press enter. And then the log path that we want to use is that authentication log that we were talking about. So let's type log path, no space, and then equals, we need to put the location of that log file, which is var log, and then auth, which is auth .log, and press enter. And then now the next thing we want to do is put max retry. So what this actually means is that this is the number of failed attempts that will be tolerated by Fail2Ban. So if you could specify whatever number you want. You could be, I think the default in the configuration file is 3, but a lot on my production server I put 2. So you could put 2 failed attempts. You can even put 1 failed attempt. So if you fail 1 time, then you'll get banned at that time. And also be careful with this, because if your IP get banned, you gotta go to the server physically and log into the server. Especially if it's like a remote server or something, you gotta go into the server and unban your IP address. But that shouldn't be a problem for you guys, because you already have SSH keys set up, so you won't have any failed attempts. And that's what I recommend people to do, is go down and set up SSH keys. That way you don't have to type in a password. So if you type in a password wrong, you know what I'm saying, you ain't got to worry about getting banned. But I will show you guys how to ignore certain IPs. But anyway, that's max retry. And the last thing I like to add is the actual ban time. Now, I put the ban time here, even though you could configure it higher up in the other configuration file, the jail.config file. You could put the time there and you don't have to put anything here. But I like to keep them separate, you know what I'm saying? Because it all depends on how frequent the attempts, login attempts are on a particular service. Then, you know, I'll kind of up the ban time. That'll prevent people from that'll stop people from actually trying, at least for a while. You know what I'm saying? And the default though is 600 seconds, which is 10 minutes. And so if you pull out your calculator, you can calculate how much time you want to ban somebody. So like on my production server, I have it like set to 15 days. So I put that number, I calculated the amount of time, because 3600 is an hour. So that's an hour ban. And then 24 hours in a day, you know what I'm saying? And you can calculate that up to however many days you want to, you know, ban an IP address if you want to. And really, all it's doing is slowing down the process. You can't stop these people from running their little brute force program, but this will slow them down and frustrate them enough to get them to stop trying to brute force your server. But it doesn't matter if you have SSH configured properly, where there's no root login, as well as you can ban password login as well and only use SSH keys. So this is just an extra bit of protection that will kind of slow the brute forcers down and kind of frustrate them enough to where they would just go on and stop. But anyway, I'll just leave it at 3600, and that's pretty much all we have to do to configure SSH for Fail2Ban. So we're gonna go down and save this right fast. So Control X and then Y for yes, and it's gonna save it in jail.local in that directory. So if we ls, let's see, ls that directory, we should see our jail.local file, and there it is. It's right next to .config. Okay, so let me cd and then clear as well. And since we made changes to Fail2Ban, we need to restore Fail2Ban. So let's type in that command right now, and it's sudo systemctl restart Fail2Ban service. And cool. So Fail2Ban is started, and we should have the SSH configuration set up. So one thing we could do is check the status of Fail2Ban by using the Fail2Ban client, which is built in. Is, included in the actual file. So if you type Fail2Ban, and then we have the client, and then let's just check the status. So I'm gonna run it at the top level, but you can obviously, you can specify the application that you want to look at. So like, let's say you have multiple applications that you're protecting using Fail2Ban, you could specify them by just typing like SSHD. That's the only one we have, set up. So you can just type Fail2Ban client status, and it'll pull the Fail2Ban status. But I also forgot, you have to run it as root or sudo. So there you go. So that gives you the status of the jails, and it will obviously it'll show more information. If you get down into the actual application, it'll show you a little bit more information. It'll give you the files that it's checking, the currently amount failed attempts, the total failed attempts, as well as the currently banned, total ban, and banned IP list. So it'll list out all the IP addresses. Okay, so let me go down and ban myself from my host machine, using my host machine right fast. Let me open up a terminal right fast so I can ban myself on this server. And okay, so SSH 192.168.10.125. All right, cool. And I'm not going to type in that in the password. I'm going to do it twice. And now it says permission denied after 2 attempts. So if I try to connect to it again, and I know you guys can't see it, it says connection refused. So it looks as though the system is down to me. And I'll switch over so you guys can see that right fast. Hold on one second. Let's zoom in. Okay, guys, so you should be able to see my screen now, but that's what happened. I just didn't type in the password for it twice. And then it says permission denied right here. And then it says connection refused. So each time I run SSH against this server for an hour, it'll say connection refused. So that's how it actually works. Now let me switch back over to the VM right fast so you guys can see what it looks like in the Fail2Ban client. Okay, cool. So I'm back on the VM, and let me run that same command again. That sudo Fail2Ban client status SSHD. Press enter. And as you can see, 2 total failed, and then currently banned. 1 IP is banned, which is my IP address on my host machine. So that shows you that SSH works. Now, you don't want to actually do this. You don't want to accidentally ban yourself from logging into your system via SSH. So I want to show you guys how to actually unban your system or your IP address from whatever system is trying to connect. So let's say you're able to get into the server. The first thing you want to do, because most of the time when this thing is running, you have a whole bunch of IP addresses. We actually know what the IP address is that we're trying to, unban, but a lot of times you won't once, this thing is up and running. So the first thing you want to do is get the IP address, and I'm going to use the IP tables command, IP tables in, and then dash lowercase n dash capital L. And if we press enter on that, I forgot we have to type in sudo when we're using this. So let's type that in. And let's pipe this into less. That way we can scroll through it. But as you can see, this is what we're looking for. We're looking for the rejected connections. And it shows you the IP address too. And this is what we want to look for. We want to go through and look for the Fail2Ban SSH chain. And then you will see the rejection settings in there. So if you look at reject, it should show your IP address, which I already know what it is, but this is how you find it. You can go into IP tables and find out what the IP address is and actually, kind of copy it. So since we know what it is, I'm gonna just quit that. And I want to go down and show you guys how to unban something. So let's type clear. And let me walk you through the command. So it's actually sudo. You have to type sudo, and then Fail2Ban client. And then we want to type set SSHD and then unban IP. And then we need to type in that IP address. So 192.168.10.115 and press enter. And that'll unban that IP address. So if we go back and look at status right fast, and actually we could look at IP tables as well again, just to see, and you'll see under that chain fail FTB SSHD, you'll see that my IP address is not blocked anymore. So if we type Q to quit, and then also let's go to sudo Fail2Ban client, and then status, then SSHD, and press enter. You'll see that IP address, it shouldn't be banned anymore. I know it's not banned anymore because as you can see, it's not in IP tables anymore. So it's banned. That's showing you the total amount of IPs that have been banned in the past. And as you can see, it says currently banned 0. So my IP address has been removed. Cool. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. If you have any questions, leave comments down in the comment boxes below. And of course, keep it techie.